Hey guys, tonight we drift far from bright cities and noisy intersections. You're stepping barefoot into the cool, crumbling edge of the Nile. The frogs are already arguing. Reeds bend just enough to let the wind pass. And above it all, glowing like a forgotten coin, is the waxing crescent moon, barely hanging on. You're not here to fish. Not really. You're here to watch people who have memorized the moon in ways your weather app never could. Nubian fishermen, shirt sleeves rolled, nets on shoulders, and nicknames for Moonlight itself are setting up something deceptively ordinary. A crescent net. It's shaped a little funny, not quite symmetrical. The top edge curls like a smile that knows something. This net's only used on evenings like this when the moon's new and shy, not yet full enough to drown the stars. According to local logic, only a specific kind of fish will nibble on nights like this, probably the dramatic ones. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is. Maybe you're in Toronto at 11:42 p.m. or Perth, just barely past 9. Either way, now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The net unfurls like a map written in loops and patience. No one hurries. They never do. You lean against a worn log, watching fingers move through the rope like they've done it 1,000 times. Because they have. The fishermen don't call this a crescent net out of whimsy, it's literal. They believe that fish behave differently under each phase of the moon, and that nets should respect that. This crescent-shaped beauty only works now. Use it under a full moon, and they claim you'll catch regret and mud. Historians still argue whether this naming system was more spiritual or practical. Some think it was rooted in detailed observation generations tracking tides, light levels, and fish migration. Others say it was more about rhythm, ceremony, and keeping time before paper calendars were a thing. Either way, each moon phase had a net, and each net had a job, a name, and usually a rumor attached to it. You watch a younger fisherman, maybe 19, maybe 60. It's hard to tell whisper to the net as he sets it. You're not supposed to hear, but it sounds like a soft greeting. Or maybe a warning. The water laps against your ankles. A breeze stirs the edge of the papyrus. The moon does nothing. Of course, it's been watching people do this for centuries, without once changing its face. It's not glamorous work. No dramatic battles with sea monsters. Just a slow, meditative rhythm of stretching nets, pacing the shoreline, checking knots. You blink slowly, lulled by the repetition. The frogs pause, then resume, louder. At some point, someone offers you a roasted date. It's sticky. It helps. The air smells like sweet algae and warm rope. No one wears a watch. They just glance up. The crescent net is the first of many. It's meant for shallow banks and slow-moving fish ones too shy to dart. You can't help but think of it as the introvert's net. One elder explains that some nets are bold, while others are patient. This one, patient, waits quietly, nearly invisible. Cast it too loud, and it folds in on itself. Kind of like your Aunt Carla. Back home, you wouldn't dream of giving a net a personality. Here, it's rude not to. A net's behavior is just as real as the moon's pull. You don't challenge that. You just watch. The moon creeps higher. The net settles into its shape, forming a sleepy arc on the surface. A few silver flashes below tiny fish. Curious, or maybe just gossiping. There's a belief. Quirky, unconfirmed, but earnestly passed down that each net remembers its past catches, that a net that's caught eels before may try again, and that some nets sulk when stored too long. You make a mental note not to store your own emotions in a basket. You're not a net. Probably, you yawn without realizing. The frogs lull again. Someone hums a tune with no lyrics, just slow vowels and half-breathed syllables. You close your eyes for a second. When you open them, the net has caught something not big, but enough to make a fisherman nod in that unbothered, satisfied way. They pull it in, like it's a page from a book you haven't read yet. And then they reset. Same slow pace. Same whispered greeting. Same moon. Only a hair higher. The crescent net may be the simplest, but it's also the most poetic. No one brags about it. No one competes with it. It's the first thing you learn and the last thing you forget. Tonight, it's working, quietly. Like all the best stories, you settle deeper into the warm soil, arms draped over your knees, as the breeze trades scents mud, hemp rope, river leaf. The moon tilts just a little higher, its pale crescent sharpened like a fingernail, clipping against the velvet dark. Beside you, two fishermen argue softly, sleepily, about whether this net has ever once caught a fish worth keeping. They speak in that way elders do, where memory slides into myth and then right back into practical complaint. The crescent net, one says, was named by his grandmother. The other insists it was his uncle, who had no grandmother, only a fondness for dramatizing fish. You don't interrupt. You let the rhythm of it carry you. Names floating like lily pads, fish that arrive only when the moon blinks, nets that misbehave when left untied. This is how nets got their names, not from charts or science, but from whispered consensus and the occasional stubborn grandfather who insisted, loudly, that the waning gibbous was bad luck for tilapia. Some nets were named after the moon's shape, others after its effect on the water. A few were named after things no one quite remembers anymore, like the net of bleeding light, which, apparently, glowed red once, or the net that hummed, still doesn't hum, but it keeps the name out of respect. Historians still argue whether this system of lunar net naming was widespread across the Nile or just peculiar to Nubian banks. There's evidence of similar practices among other river cultures, but nothing quite as detailed or as dramatic as here. You start to pick up the categories. There's the practical net, named after moonlight angles. The ceremonial net, used once a year for festivals and too fragile for real fishing. The petty net, dragged out only when someone needs to prove a point. And the secret net, that one. No one talks about, naturally. You want to ask. Instead, you sip something warm from a clay cup someone passes your way. It tastes like time. Probably tamarind and roasted grain. But you don't ask. You just nod like you understand what night fishing requires. Each net, you learn, has a season and a voice. You're told not to speak directly to them unless you're the one casting. Something about confusing the net, or possibly the fish, or possibly the moon itself. In the distance, a woman hums as she braids fibers into a spare net. Her fingers move like she's weaving a lullaby. You inch closer. The net is long and narrow, dyed faint blue with crushed indigo petals, and something they only call sky moss. When you ask the net's name, she grins. This one is for when the moon forgets itself. You blink. That's not a phase. It is here, she says, like that solves everything. Some names sound like poetry. Net of first curl, basket of sleeping reflections, web for the shy moon. Others are just blunt like fat catcher or snake stopper. You suspect some were renamed out of spite. They talk about nets like you might talk about old co-workers ones who were reliable but weirdly obsessed with side projects. You begin to recognize some patterns. Waxing nets are hopeful, cast when the moon is growing. When the river is generous, waning nets are cautious, used after full moons. When fish get erratic or lazy, and the full moon nets, that's when everyone shows up. Full moons mean drama. Even the frogs dress up. You're told about a net called the listener. It's used only when no one is allowed to speak. The theory is, the quieter the crew, the louder the fish. Not scientifically proven, but convincing, in the soft, worn way that oral histories always are. Tonight's crescent net sways in the shallows, tethered loosely to a driftwood stake. You ask how long it stays, until the moon grows out of it. Someone says, that's the thing about naming nets after the moon. You're always updating, always correcting. Nets get renamed, reblessed, occasionally retired when the moon misbehaves. One net was burned, you're told, after catching nothing but frogs for 6 nights straight. The frogs were not even useful frogs, just loud ones. There's something oddly bureaucratic about it all. A rotating schedule of approvals, edits, grudges, and celestial HR disputes. Someone shows you an old net frayed and patched with what might be linen or regret. It's kept in a dry gourd case, tied with reed cord. No one uses it, but they nod toward it respectfully. It once caught a sturgeon the size of a canoe during a waxing moon that looked like it was trying to sneak out of the sky without being noticed. You realize this isn't just naming, it's memory. A net's name is a breadcrumb back to a specific moment, A moon that cracked weird that night. A fish that shouldn't have been there. A silence that felt like warning. And these memories aren't stored in books. They're stored in rope, in phrases, in moonlight gossip passed down on drifting boats. The frogs begin to quiet. Again, the woman with the indigo net stops weaving. The air goes still enough for you to hear the wet slap of a fish further upstream. One of the elders smiles without turning. That's a job for the half-awake net. We'll show you next. You don't ask what phase we're in. You already know. You're ankle deep in river water again. Sleeves rolled a little higher as the moon climbs slightly fuller, slightly bolder. No longer just a shy crescent tonight, it's got more backbone, more curve. And with it comes the net of first light. It's laid out beside your feet like a sleeping scarf, longer than the crescent net, tighter in its weave. The fishermen refer to it as the curious net, not because it's strange, but because it's meant to catch fish that are the ones that swim too close to the surface during the early waxing phase, peeking at moonlight as if it's gossip. You reach for it gently. It's soft, surprisingly so, woven from a mix of river flax and a fiber you can't quite name, possibly goat hair, possibly some forgotten cousin of cotton, possibly, according to one sleepy teen nearby, moon thread. He's kidding. You think? Historians still debate whether moon phase fishing in Nubia was more ritualistic than empirical. But even skeptical archaeologists admit these people observed patterns no one bothered writing down. Like how this specific net with narrow mouths and a tightening loop only worked when the moon was gaining strength but still didn't spill too much light. The fish were bold, but not reckless. You could relate. You step into the boat this time. It's made from stitched acacia bark and ambition, sits low in the water, smells like old sun and wet sandals. The net rests at your feet, curled like a cat that knows it's about to be useful. The fisherman paddling beside you is quiet, focused. His oar barely makes a sound, slicing the dark water with the rhythm of someone who's done this longer than you've been alive. You glance up. The moon isn't full yet, but it's practicing, trying on roundness like it's not sure it wants the attention. You watch as the net is cast, not thrown, exactly more like release. It floats outward in a spiral, then settles, a lazy spin, guided by soft hand tugs and practice flicks of the wrist. The net of first light moves differently from the crescent. It glides. It pulses slightly in the current, like it's breathing. You're not imagining it. Or if you are, you're in good company. The man beside you nods like, yes, it does that. There's a local superstition half-joke, half-warning that if this net catches a fish with mismatched eyes, you have to hum all the way home or risk losing your boat's memory. That last part confuses you, but no one explains it. They just shrug like boats forget things. You'll see. The river widens. The moon reflects perfectly, then imperfectly. A soft ripple distorts the light, and suddenly, the surface looks like someone spilled secrets into a mirror. You lean over the edge, in the net movement, slippery flashes. You think you see 3, maybe 4 fish, nothing big, but they shimmer with that silvery arrogance only riverfish possess, the kind that probably critique your rowing form under their breath. The catch is slow, on purpose. No one rushes this phase. It's the in-between moon. Too early for celebration, too late for mourning. It's where you make quiet progress, the phase for patient ambition. You ask about the net's name, why first light? When the moon is the dominant character, the reply comes like a riddle, because it reminds the fish. The sun is coming. Okay, you won't overthink it. The names don't always translate cleanly. Some are puns. Some are references to things lost. One fisherman explains that many names come from dreams, actual dreams, not metaphorical ones. Apparently, some nets refuse to be named until someone dreams of their purpose. You wonder if that's how you got your own name. Possibly not. But still interesting system. The net is pulled in, slow, careful, precise. It resists at first lightly, then yields. A good net, you're told, always resists a little. It's how you know it's awake. Inside, 5 fish, small, but satisfying. One has a scale pattern that makes it look like it's wearing a tunic. The youngest crew member holds it up like a trophy, then immediately lets it go. Too clever, he says. Apparently, some fish get reputations. That one, slips nets on purpose, taught others how to do it, caught once before and memorized the knot structure. Again, you don't ask for proof. The logic of river people is like jazz. It doesn't need you to believe. It needs you to listen. As the boat glides back toward shore, the net of first light dries in the wind. It doesn't smell like fish. It smells like wet straw and distant thunder. There's a theory that nets absorb mood, that if you cast them when angry, they catch only disappointment. Tonight's net caught quiet contentment, maybe a hint of pride. Back on land, you help coil it. The fibers slip through your hands like woven dusk. Someone hums again, that same vowel-heavy tune from before. The frogs approve with a chorus. Before you leave, the fisherman pats the net gently and mutters, "Good job, old moonstring." You look up at the moon. It's fatter now, more certain. You can already sense the next net waiting in the shadows, half ready, half drowsy, just like you. You wake slowly, or maybe you never really slept, just drifted somewhere in between the wind and the water's hush. The moon is climbing still, bolder now. Swollen halfway into its arc, it floats above the reeds like a polished coin, flipped by some ancient, silent hand. Tonight's net is known as the half-awake. It's longer, thicker at the knots, and it creaks when uncoiled, like a hammock that's been waiting all winter. This one's not dainty. It doesn't glide. It sags under its own memory. And you know instantly, this net has stories. The older fisherman lifts it with both arms like a reluctant child. She doesn't like being rushed. He warns, treat her gentle, like you would a tired friend who's just started sipping their first tea. This net is used under first quarter moons, those days when the moon is exactly half lit and not in a particularly good mood about it. It's the phase of stubbornness, the phase of half decisions and partially told truths. Historians still argue whether first quarter fishing ever had strategic advantages. The light is inconsistent, the shadows confusing. But here, along this stretch of Nubian riverbank, it was believed this phase coaxed fish out of indecision, not with trickery, but with sympathy. They swim in circles, you're told, and sometimes they just need someone else to choose. The half-awake net does that choosing. It has weighted corners and odd angles meant to trap hesitant fish that hesitate 1 second too long. You help carry it to the shallows. It drags behind you like a sleepwalker's robe, and every few steps, someone stops to untangle a stubborn loop or mutter a quiet apology to a knot. You ask why it's so fussy. Because she remembers arguments. Okay, not ominous at all. The water tonight has turned glassy. The stars blur in the current. Everything feels like it's been dunked in oil and candlelight. You slip into the boat again, the half-awake net between your knees. It's warm from the touch of so many hands. Or maybe that's just your imagination. Either way, the boat smells different tonight, like old rope, wild mint, and something slightly metallic. The casting is slower. The net unravels like a sigh. It drops into the water with less splash, more shiver. It takes its time. While it settles, the crew talks softly. Old family disputes, near misses with crocodiles, and one particularly confusing fishing trip where someone swears they caught a fish with a tattoo. No one believes him, but the story gets told anyway. That's tradition. You drift. Oars still. The river hums in your ears like it's breathing through cotton. There's a silence between words here, a shared understanding that sometimes the moon isn't just a phase, it's a personality. You wonder what kind of person the first quarter moon would be? Probably someone who double texts and then regrets it. Someone who starts fixing something and then walks away mid-task to water a plant. Endearing, annoying, deeply relatable. Below the boat, the net begins its slow work. The weight system is clever, stone discs wrapped in braided hemp. They pull at odd angles, forcing fish into certain chambers. It's less a trap and more a conversation. The net doesn't catch so much as persuade, and then you feel the shift. A subtle tug, like someone remembering a name they haven't said in years. The net is drawn back in, hand by hand. Slippery resistance. A splash here. A gleam there, 6 fish, 1 eel, and, somehow, a sandal. No one claims the sandal. The catch is sorted on a flat plank laid across the boat. The eel is admired, then insulted gently, and let go. The fish are catalogued with nods and short words. One has a scar on its flank too familiar. It's tossed back. He's on our side, someone mutters. You ask what that means. You're told that fish always shows up when things go wrong. We let him watch. Superstition. Probably. Or maybe some old agreement made when the river was younger and rules were looser. The half-awake net is coiled again, more grumpily this time. You get the sense it resents being so useful, like a retired professor who keeps getting invited to guest lectures. As you step ashore, someone hands you a slice of fig soaked in honey. It tastes like sleep. You chew slowly, watching the net drip dry from a wooden pole. A small child not more than 6 wanders up, looks at the net, and says with a shrug, "That one doesn't like Mondays." You laugh, then realize no one else is laughing. They nod in agreement. You pat the net gently, just in case. Behind you, the moon climbs higher more than halfway now, enough to make the frogs quiet again, enough to suggest the next net is waiting, and you're just awake enough to want to meet it. By now, you know the drill, though nothing really feels like a drill out here. Everything flows like the river, slow, circular, and full of pauses that nobody rushes to fill. The moon is full-bellied tonight. Gibbous, technically, not quite round, but proud of its shape. It hangs above the river like it wants to be applauded. You oblige it silently with a nod, and with it comes the net they call fat-bellied. This one is hefty. It takes 2 men and a thick branch to carry it. It's dyed a muddy brown and smells faintly like pickled onions, though no one brings that up. The elders speak of this net with respect, but also wariness, like someone might speak of an old dog that bit a few cousins but kept the yard safe. This one, the net master says, is for the catfish. You glance at the bundle of rope and mesh. It looks like a deflated sea monster or a disgruntled rug. Either way, it's not graceful. This one doesn't like to be looked at too long either. Someone whispers behind you, "Great!" Fat-bellied is reserved for gibbous nights when the moon is too full to hide, but not full enough to behave. It's a net of appetite, used when fish, especially catfish, are drawn to the warmer, deeper water, gorging themselves before the full moon's pull drags them into weird behavior. Historians still debate whether this specific net design had functional logic. The mesh is wider, but it twists in odd spirals, some think to confuse the fish. Others claim it mimics river currents. There's even a theory that it imitates eel trails, coaxing hungry catfish to follow. Whatever its purpose, the net is dramatic. You help uncoil it, slowly. The weight is uneven, like lifting something that resents you. It slaps the ground. You flinch. One of the fishermen pats your back. She does that. You wade into deeper water now. This isn't a shoreline net. This is for channels with current, places where the river sounds more like breath than trickle. The casting is aggressive. It takes a wide swing of arms, a full-body twist, and a shout that echoes through the reeds. The net lands with a whump and a splash that startles several birds into cursing you from the treetops. You wait, ankle-deep and bracing against the pull. The rope goes taut almost immediately. It always does. You're told whether it catches anything or not. That's fat-bellied for you. You learn a curious superstition. This net is never stored facing west. West is where the hungry go. Someone says cryptically, "We don't want her remembering that." Okay. Another note. Catfish are considered tricksters. If they escape once, they'll bring friends the next time. One fisherman claims he once caught a catfish with a fishhook already in its mouth, one of his from 3 years earlier. It winked at him. Apparently, you're not sure what's true anymore, but the stories work like ambient lullabies. They wrap around you like warm water. It doesn't matter what's real. The river believes in itself. The gibbous moon casts odd shadows. Now shadows with round edges and blurred outlines. Your own reflection looks like it's smirking at you. You stop looking at it. Instead, you focus on the net. It shifts below the surface like something alive. The current bumps against it, but it holds. It knows its job. After a long wait, the net is drawn in. It fights, not fiercely, but deliberately. Every knot feels like it's arguing with your fingers. You pull anyway, and then resistance. A proper weight. It emerges slowly, dragging silt and bubbles and at least 3 fish that look too sleepy to protest. One, indeed, is a catfish. Long, thick, and wearing the expression of someone interrupted mid-dream. Fat-bellied did her job. You dump the catch into a wide basin carved from an old canoe. The fish flop once, then accept their fate with a slow blink. One of the elders chuckles. The moon feeds heavy. Someone else jokes that this particular net also caught a goat once. No one confirms whether the goat survived. or why it was in the water. You do not ask. The net is cleaned meticulously, not out of neatness, but out of obligation. If you leave river mud in her folds, she'll come back bitter, the netmaster warns. So you rinse, you hum, you let your hands memorize the weight of it. Afterward, the net is rolled, not folded, and placed carefully on a wide slab of stone. It's left to rest there, never hung, never coiled too tight. It needs to breathe, they say. You stare at the moon, almost full now. It leans toward the final arc, the celebratory shape. But tonight is still for hunger, for gibbous appetite, for the fat-bellied catch in the nets that know more than they're telling. You step back from the water, your clothes soaked to the knees, your muscles stretched from the pull. The frogs have gone quiet again. Even the breeze seems tired. Tomorrow night, they'll bring out the ceremonial net. But for now, fat-bellied rests, and so do you. The riverbank looks different tonight. Everything glows. Not the shimmering reflection kind of glow, but a full-bodied lunar bath. The moon is at its roundest now, fat and smug, perched high above the palm-lined banks like it owns the place. You squint at the brightness. The shadows it casts are so sharp, it feels like midday in monochrome. Even the frogs seem a little confused. And right on cue, the fishermen roll out the one they call the net of the full mother. This net is not for casual use. It's massive, twice the size of anything you've seen yet. Dyed a soft ivory hue with strands of copper thread woven along its outer rim. Decorative. You think so, but you're told the copper is for protection. Against what? Moon foolishness, someone mutters. You let that one go. The full mother net is ceremonial. It's brought out only on the full moon, and sometimes not even then. Only if the moon is well behaved. As one elder phrases it, apparently, if the moon rises too quickly or glows too white, it's considered impatient and the net stays home. Tonight, the moon is behaving. The net is unrolled with careful choreography. It has loops, pockets, and an oddly stitched central pouch almost like a cradle. That's where the offering goes. Yes, you heard right. Historians still argue whether these rituals were rooted in pre-Islamic Nubian animism, fertility rites, or symbolic conservation practices. The full moon ceremony seems to blend all three and a little bit of superstition that nobody's quite ready to retire. Tonight's offering is simple: a handful of crushed pomegranate seeds, a silver bead, and a curl of someone's hair. Not yours. Probably. You don't ask. The net is blessed with smoke from burning river sage. A younger fisherman fans the smoke with a fan made from reeds and ostrich feathers. He looks both reverent and slightly bored. Then comes the lullaby. Soft, melodic, wordless. The kind of sound you'd hear in a dream just before waking. You find yourself humming along without knowing the tune. It vibrates in your ribs like a shared memory. Once blessed. The full mother net is carried by 4 people to a part of the river known as the Mirror's Bend, a shallow curve where the moon reflects perfectly if the water's calm and curses the crew if it doesn't. The moon tonight. Cooperative. The bend glows like polished glass. The net is lowered, not cast. Like placing a blanket over a restless child, it floats on the surface for a moment, then slowly sinks, cradled by the river. You sit cross-legged near the edge, hands in your lap, watching the ritual unfold. This net isn't just for catching fish, it's for balancing things. River energies, moon tempers, community rhythms, even gossip. Somehow, you're told this net once stopped an argument that had lasted 3 seasons. When asked how, the answer is vague. It caught what needed catching. Okay then. The river is still. The moon pulses gently, and then, slowly, the net is drawn in. No shouting, no drama, just the sound of hemp slipping through water and the soft grunt of effort. What's inside? 3 fish, all silver, all oddly calm, and one tiny turtle, blinking slowly, like it expected a bigger audience. The elders nod. Good haul. One says, balanced. The turtle is returned to the river with ceremony and a handful of song. The fish are held up to the moon, inspected, and then let go. All of them. You blink. Why not keep them? Because tonight isn't for eating. You're told It's for remembering who feeds us. The net is lifted again, wet, glistening. A moonlit jellyfish in the hands of quiet men. It's rolled backward this time, wrapped in a linen shroud and tucked into a reed-woven trunk lined with dry moss and sandalwood bark. That trunk is carried off toward the village, flanked by two older women who say nothing and hum everything. And just like that, it's over. The net of the full mother has made her appearance. She won't be seen again until the next moon or the one after that. Or not at all. Depends on the river's mood. You lie back in the grass now, staring up at the unblinking full moon. It stares back. You wonder if it's pleased. You wonder if it ever isn't. The frogs sing again, this time in harmony. Even the crickets seem to harmonize. The wind shifts just enough to carry away the last traces of river smoke and copper thread. And you breathe out slowly. You didn't catch a thing, but you feel full. Tonight, the moon has started to exhale. It no longer beams with that round, maternal smugness. It retreats slightly, waning just a touch, like it's had its fill and now prefers shadows. The river, too, seems quieter, less showy. The frogs aren't gone, but they sound like they've had a long day. And from a stack of net bundles, the fishermen unroll a pale, delicate thing they call the stillness. It's the net used in the first days after the full moon, when the light softens and the energy around the river folds in on itself. It's fragile, narrower than the others, almost insubstantial. If you squint, it looks like someone tried to weave mist into rope. You're told it's a net for what remains, for fish who linger, for the ones too slow, too thoughtful, or too stubborn to join their faster siblings. The moon has eaten, someone explains. Now it dreams, so the fish are slower. We fish gently, or not at all. You carry one end of the net. It trails behind you like a memory, soft, silent, damp. When you lift it, it clings to itself. When you try to untangle it, it resists, not out of anger, just reluctance. Historians still debate whether these late waning nets had any practical use. There is evidence that catches drop dramatically after the full moon. Some argue these nets were symbolic an act of discipline, of showing humility. Others insist the timing matched the behavior of certain night feeders who preferred low light and cool water. But here, in the Nubian dark, nobody explains it with charts. They just say, this is the time to listen. The net is never thrown. Instead, it's laid hand over hand onto the water's edge. Like setting a table for ghosts, it doesn't sink far. It hovers in the shallows, held up by tiny reed floats no larger than a thumbnail. Someone blesses it not with smoke this time, but with silence. And you wait. The fisherman beside you sits with his hands on his knees, not watching the net, but staring at the sky's edge. As if expecting a message, another begins whittling a small stick into the shape of a spoon. You wonder if the fish care. You ask what they're hoping to catch. The ones who didn't run. Comes the answer. The ones too thoughtful. You glance at the water. It's not moving much. Barely a ripple. Even the reflection of the moon looks sleepy, blurred, distorted. The way memories fade at the edges. Someone tells you this net once caught a fish that no one could name. It had the body of a carp, the eyes of a frog, and markings that resembled writing. They threw it back immediately, not out of fear, but because some things aren't for eating. A pause. You wonder what would happen if you found it again. The stillness net starts to shift, gently, just enough to draw breath. A whisper across the line. You and the others gather to pull it in hands like soft hooks, motions slow and reverent. Inside, two small fish, one with a missing fin, the other covered in mud, blinking at you with the tired dignity of someone caught after closing time. That's all. You put them in a shallow clay basin half filled with river water. No one rushes to kill them. No one celebrates. There's just a nod, and then quiet. This isn't about bounty. This is about grace. The net is washed in silence. No chatter, no humming. It's rinsed gently and hung on a forked branch facing the moon's direction, not to dry, but to remember what it saw. You stare at it a while. The way it sags, the way it holds shape even when empty. You feel something loosen in your chest. Someone nearby coughs, then adds in a casual tone. We used to think this net could dream. You look over, like real dreams. No, he says, river dreams, where the fish tell their side. You almost laugh, but the quiet won't let you. The moon slips lower now, though it's still high. Its edge is dimmer, as if it's withdrawing, ashamed of its earlier brightness, or maybe just tired. You pack the net back into its cloth pouch. It folds easier now, not limp, just ready. You sling it over your shoulder, careful not to squeeze too tight. It doesn't like to be carried like luggage on the walk back. No one talks, just the sound of sandals on soft earth and the rhythm of a slow river pulling its blanket tighter. Tomorrow, the sliver nets come out, the ones that don't even pretend to catch much. But tonight, you carried the stillness. And somehow, that's enough. The moon has gone thin on you, a waning crescent now. Just a soft arc of light curled up in the sky like a fingernail or a wink you're not sure was meant for you. It's hard to see your shadow tonight, but the frogs don't mind. They've resumed their gossip, louder, somehow, like they've been saving it. And now, quietly, without ceremony, comes the sliver net. That's not its official name, but it's what everyone calls it. You're handed the bundle, it's barely the weight of a towel, light, frayed, quiet, the kind of net you'd expect to lose in a strong breeze. If Fat-Bellied was a mother-in-law with opinions, and the full mother was a queen, then the sliver net is the spy, or maybe the whisper. You walk with it to the edge of a quiet inlet. No one says much. One of the elders trails behind, hands in pockets, humming a tune with no tempo. When he catches you watching, he just shrugs. This one works best if you don't stare. The sliver net is used during the last days of the lunar cycle. Those quiet nights when light feels stolen, and the moon is more rumor than spotlight. It's a net for stealth, thin threads, nearly invisible in the water, sparse knots, a design that's less about trap and more about suggestion. Some say it doesn't catch fish so much as confuse them into giving up. You help unwind it. It snags a few times on your sleeve, your fingers, a loose twig. It doesn't like being rushed. You feel like you're unraveling someone's secret instead of preparing to fish. Best used when the fish are tired of running. Someone mutters. Historians still argue whether these late waning nets had any real purpose. Some say they were ceremonial stand-ins, a way to honor the moon's last breath before renewal. Others believe they were practical tools for hunting eels or tiny silverfish that only move under sliver light. The real answer, likely a mix of both. Tonight, the sliver net is being used because no one feels like making decisions. That's what this phase is for. You crouch beside the shallow bend, water up to your calves. The net is laid like a rumor across the stream. No stakes, no weights, just a few pebbles tucked into corners and hope to keep it grounded. It barely moves. It also doesn't stop moving. That's the magic. It floats just enough to look alive, like a river plant waving to passing fish, or maybe a ripple wearing a disguise. You ask what kind of fish they expect. Not fish. Someone says, truths. You wait for the laugh. None comes. The frogs keep chattering. A breeze sneaks by. The stars flicker like they're deciding whether or not to stay up late. And then the net twitches. Not dramatically, just a ripple across the middle. A suggestion of interest. You draw it in slowly. No tugs, no weight. But when it reaches your hands, something glints. Caught in the net. A single scale. Round, silver, unattached to anything else. Someone gasps softly, then chuckles. It left a calling card. You hold the scale in your palm. It's the size of a button, cold but smooth. Some say that's a message. Another elder whispers. Means the river's ready to forget something. You wonder what that could be. Then decide you don't need to know. The net is rinsed once, gently, laid flat across a low rock. It dries in silence. Its job tonight wasn't to catch it, was to listen. There's a tradition, you learn, tied to this net. If someone casts it and catches only a scale, they're allowed one question. You look around. No one says their question out loud. You don't either. Instead, you place the scale into a small gourd at the edge of the fire circle. There are others in there, dozens, maybe hundreds, of quiet questions and unanswered nights. You walk back slowly, net under your arm, feeling as if you've just had a long conversation without saying a word. The sliver net is folded into a pouch the size of your hand. It disappears inside with barely a whisper. It won't come out again until the next sliver moon. You glance up. The moon, now a pale whisper itself, seems to nod in approval or maybe farewell. And somewhere in the grass, you hear a single frog croak, long and low, like a punctuation mark at the end of a sentence. Tomorrow, the moon will vanish, and with it, all the questions left unanswered. Tonight, there's barely a moon at all, a smudge, a fading breath of light somewhere above the trees. You have to squint to see it, and even then, you're not sure if it's real or just your eyes remembering it. The new moon is coming, or already here, which means tonight isn't about fishing. It's about building. The nets are rolled up, hung to dry, or tucked away, and in their place come coils of reeds, loops of thread, knots that haven't been tied yet. Tonight is the night of weaving. You sit cross-legged near a low fire, surrounded by elders and their calloused fingers. There's a rhythm here: twist, loop, knot, pull. It's soothing, like watching someone fold warm laundry. Forever, tonight, they're repairing, reworking, and even renaming nets. Because moon cycles don't just change fish behavior, they change net identity. The Crescent Net, it's got a tier and a new name, the Sliver Net. It's been behaving strangely. Maybe it wants a rest, or a rename, or just a new pouch. You think about how odd that sounds, nets needing emotional maintenance, but after a few nights in this world, it feels logical. Of course, a net that caught only eels needs to be scolded. Of course, a net that let fish escape should be placed in time out on a drying rack facing away from the river. Historians still debate whether these personality assignments were symbolic, ceremonial, or simply a way to encourage routine upkeep. But what's clear is this: every knot has intention. Every strand has a story. You try your hand at weaving a small patch for one of the older nets. A gentle crescent design meant to signal non-aggressive capture. You don't know if the fish will care, but the woman guiding your fingers does. She adjusts your wrists slightly, not tight. Nets don't like holding grudges. You nod. Even though you're not entirely sure what you just agreed to, you're told that the weave pattern changes based on the moonlight intensity. Some knots are tighter during full moons, looser during crescents. There's even a style called river sleep, a relaxed loop meant to mimic the sway of sleeping reeds, supposedly hypnotic to small fish. As you watch the others work, you notice the sheer variety, not just in shape or size, but in attitude. One net is dyed with a turmeric and crushed shell used during the dusty months when the river gets shallow. Another is wrapped at the edges with goat hide for slippery fish. You don't ask how that works. You just admire it. One net has tiny charms tied into the corners: beads, wood chips, a shard of a clay pot. Each has a reason, even if no one remembers what that reason is. You're told not to remove them. They're keeping the net company. You finish your patch and feel absurdly proud. The fire pops gently. Someone begins retelling the story of the net that cursed a man into silence. You don't hear the whole thing. You're too distracted by the way the net glows in the firelight, silver threads catching the flame, knots glinting like patient stars. There's laughter, too. Someone jokes about the time a net refused to catch anything but frogs. 3 nights, he says, we ate nothing but legs. My uncle started croaking in his sleep. Another adds that one net long retired once caught someone's trousers. You try to imagine how that happened. The river is full of mysteries. The moon stays hidden. It's good, you're told. The nets prefer it that way when they're being rewoven. Less judgment, more possibility. Before the night ends, someone brings out a blank net, a new weave, never used. It's thin, hopeful, and completely unnamed. Everyone pauses. You realize what's happening. It's time to name it. Suggestions are tossed around like smooth pebbles. Cradle drift, the one who whispers, last light. Before rain, each is met with a quiet nod, a hum, or a shrug. No one pushes. Names have to settle, like silt. Eventually, one of the elders taps the net gently and says, let it choose when it's ready. And that's that. You place it gently on the rack beside the others. It sags slightly, like it's listening. The fire dies down. The thread spools are packed away. The crescent knife used to trim loose ends is cleaned, wrapped in linen, and placed back in its gourd case. No fishing tonight. No moon to bless the water. Just quiet preparation. The hum of river patience. The soft crackle of nets being forgiven and forgotten and made new again. And somewhere behind you, the river breathes. You don't see it, but you feel it. A low, long exhale like the night itself has just loosened a knot. By now, you've stopped checking for the moon. It's gone completely, not hiding, just absent, like someone turned off the porch light and forgot to leave a note. The night sky hangs heavy and unlit, save for the distant dusting of stars that seem more confused than luminous. The river, however, is alive. You wouldn't know it by looking, but you can feel it beneath your soles, under your breath, in the fine hairs on your arm. It hums, a low, slow rhythm, the kind that doesn't demand your attention, but rearranges your posture anyway. This is the night of river spirits. And tonight, a different kind of net is laid out. You've seen the ceremonial ones, the practical ones, even the sly, whispering crescent ones. But this net is for balance. They call it the mouth net, sometimes the breather, sometimes simply the offering. It's not used to catch fish, it's used to let go. Laid across the river during moonless nights, the mouth net is offered to the current not to collect, but to deliver bits of charred bark, a torn scarf, crushed salt, and dried herbs, all tucked gently into the net's folds before it is released downstream. Fish don't always feed on meat. One elder says, sometimes they feed on memory. You glance at the pouch of offerings. Most of it looks like trash, but you've learned not to trust your eyes here. The net is shaped like an open jaw, broad, wide at the center, with threads that taper at the ends like lips in mid-breath. Someone stitched tiny shells into the lining. They rattle faintly when the wind stirs. You ask why. Because the spirits don't like surprises. Fair. Historians still argue whether this net had spiritual or ecological significance. Some call it a symbolic gesture of balance giving to the river before taking. Others insist it was a clever method of scenting the water to attract certain breeds of fish. Then there are the few who claim it was designed to confuse crocodiles. Tonight, no one debates. They just carry the mouth net down to the bend where the reeds grow tallest, and the water moves like oil under glass. You're allowed to help place the offerings, one by one. A black feather, a pinch of ash from last week's fire, a piece of bone that might have been part of a flute. Each is added with the same care someone might give to folding a letter they'll never send. Then the net is unfurled, not cast, not flung, but released. It floats for a moment. The reeds rustle. A toad hops once, then freezes like it remembered an appointment. And then the net drifts, slowly, pulled by the same current that's been carving this riverbank since before people gave names to water. Everyone stands back. No one speaks. Even the frogs, finally, hold their tongues. You watch as the net glides just under the surface now, trailing offerings behind like a robe soaked in memories. It vanishes around the bend. Gone. You turn, but no one follows it. That's not the point. Instead, someone draws in the wet earth with a stick, a shape that resembles the moon. Then a wave. Then a spiral. You ask what it means. It means we're heard. You don't ask by what. Later, back at the fire, you're told one final quirk about the mouth net. Sometimes, just sometimes it returns. Not upstream, of course, but in dreams. In odd weather, in a fish with something in its mouth that doesn't belong there. One man swears he once has found a fragment of his grandmother's comb inside a tilapia after sending it downriver 2 seasons earlier. Another claims the net once delivered a message, a folded leaf inscribed with letters no one could read. You sip warm tea and listen. Not to judge, not even to believe, just to hold the sound. The river is different under a moonless sky. It's bolder, less filtered. You start to think maybe it doesn't always need the moon. Maybe the moon is the one who needs it. The stars blink more clearly now, like they've finally remembered how to be helpful. The net won't return tonight, but the river will remember. And tomorrow, the fish may behave differently. Not because they're hungry, but because they know someone's listening. You wake to laughter, not loud, not sharp, just the kind that floats low, sleepy, shared among people who've done this 1,000 times and still find something to chuckle about. Tonight isn't about casting nets, it's about naming them. You weren't expecting that to be a whole thing, but of course it is. The net naming ceremony takes place in a clearing just above the riverbank. There's no stage, No priest, no official list. Just a wide flat rock, a circle of mats, a bowl of fermented date drink, and a handful of fish bones arranged like tiny runes. You sit cross-legged on woven reed matting. In front of you, 5 nets lie in a row like children at a sleepover. Some are fresh and undecorated. Others are patched and worn. Clearly, veterans of dozens of fishing nights. One has a distinct bite mark in it. No one explains, and each one is waiting for a name. Naming isn't done with ceremony exactly, but it's not casual either. It begins with gossip. Real gossip. Someone brings up how a certain net got tangled in a tree last week and refused to come down until someone sang to it. Another mentions the net that keeps catching one-eyed catfish. Suspicious, but not alarming. Yet, then come the stories quiet, rhythmic, passed around the circle like bowls of soup. One man insists that his net saved his life by getting stuck on a submerged log just as a crocodile lunged at him. Another tells of a net that once caught nothing for 3 straight months until it overheard someone threaten to throw it in the fire. The next day, 30 fish. You realize this is the vetting process. Each net's history must be aired before it can be named or renamed. One net is clearly up for reassignment. It was once called night lure, but has since developed a bad habit of collecting frogs and plastic wrappers. Someone suggests whisper trap. Another jokes the gossiper. Everyone laughs, but someone else quickly counters. No jokes and final names. Nets remember insults. Fair point. The fish bones, you discover, are used for a sort of divination. Thrown gently from a shallow basket, they form patterns, lines, circles, clusters. These shapes are interpreted loosely, intuitively, with sleepy glances and half-remembered lore. A spiral means mischief. A straight line is persistence. A fish head pointing north. That one wants to lead. Someone says, it's equal parts poetry and weather report. You ask who gets the final say. No one answers. Eventually, someone says, the net does. Okay. Historians still argue about the origins of this naming tradition. Was it rooted in animist beliefs? Was it a way to encode net types for memory's sake? Or just an excuse for community bonding over palm wine and storytelling? Probably so, all 3. And maybe a 4th reason no one wrote down. You're asked to name one. They hand you a small net barely the length of your arm. Pale gray, with fine weaves like linen and a single red bead near the edge. You run your fingers through it. It doesn't resist, but it feels alert, like it's paying attention. You think for a moment, then say, watcher's net. There's a pause, then nods. Someone pours a splash of date drink into a carved gourd and dribbles a few drops onto the net center. It's not for luck. It's for recognition. The net accepts the name. You've never felt so honored by an inanimate object. Not all names are accepted, though one boy offers Splashy Boy for his net. Clearly as a joke, the net immediately snags his robe as he stands. Everyone howls with laughter, then gently explains that names are a two-way street. Another tries River's Fang for a net that's only caught driftwood. It coils itself in protest. He changes it to Bend Sleeper, and the net settles. Much better. Later, someone mentions that an elder once tried to name his net after his wife. The net tore itself in half. You're not sure if that's a true story, but no one argues. You learn that names can be retired too. If a net fails repeatedly, or if it's involved in some misfortune, it might be renamed to shed its past, but not often. Most names stick because names are anchors. They hold memory, meaning, personality. They help the fishers know how to cast, when to cast, and what to expect. A net called Curious Mouth is expected to wander. A net named Sharp Curve prefers to be cast with a twist of the wrist. A net named Quiet Basket once caught a bird, a sleeping one. Still unclear how. The fire dies down. The stars pulse a little brighter. Someone's carving the accepted names into a split reed scroll. A kind of communal logbook that's never read, only added to. You look over at Watcher's net. It lies still, but not empty. You feel like it's waiting. Tonight, everything is guesswork. The sky has gone fully dark again, not even a sliver to guide you. The moon's off doing whatever it does when no one's watching, probably sulking, or recharging, or both. And wouldn't you know it, that's exactly when the clouds roll in. No stars, no moon, no reflections. Just a wall of black above and soft mist rising from the river like it's trying to hide something, which means it's time for emergency nets. You didn't know there were such things, but apparently they exist. Stored in lopsided baskets, folded beneath coiled ropes and damp cloths, the emergency nets are the backups, the understudies. They're not glamorous. No copper threads, no poetic names. Just wide weaves, rough knots, and a smell that can only be described as forgotten raincoat. You pull one out, it creaks, which is not something nets are supposed to do. Don't worry. Someone says, that one's been cursed before. It's fine now. Reassuring. The thing about moonless, cloud-choked nights is that fish can act weird. Some hide, some panic, some swim in circles like they've lost their address. You never know what you're going to get. So emergency nets are built for anything. Thick strands that won't snap under stress, quick loops that can be tied with frozen fingers, and enough slack in the weave to allow for sudden flailing by either fish or human. Historians still argue whether these catch-all nets were innovations of necessity or just lazy designs that turned lucky. Some believe they were originally for hauling debris or fallen tools. Others think they were used for nighttime defense against crocodiles, or perhaps angry neighbors. The truth? Probably both. You help unroll one along a mud flat, the ground squelches underfoot. The frogs are still out, but even they sound hesitant, like they're waiting to see what kind of night this will become. There's no ritual tonight, no sage smoke, no moon chant. Just a whisper. We'll take what shows up. You cast the net clumsily. It lands heavy. The splash feels louder than it should, but no one scolds you. That's kind of the spirit of these nights. Nobody expects elegance, just effort. The emergency net doesn't sink so much as plop. It settles, and then just exists. You sit beside a rock, feet in the water, watching the darkness ripple. You can't even see the edge of the net anymore. Only your hands and your breath and the vague, sour smell of something fermenting in the reeds. A few of the elders drink something bitter from a clay jug and pass it around. You're offered a sip. It tastes like boiled tires and regret, but it warms your ribs, so you don't complain. You wait. Nothing bites, nothing pulls. And then movement, not a tug. Just a ripple, traveling up the line. You and another fisherman move to pull it in. It resists, not hard, just heavy, as if it accidentally picked up a piece of the river's memory. You haul it hand over hand. Inside, a boot and a fish. The boot has moss growing in it. The fish has one eye, one fin, and the meanest glare you've ever seen on a gill-bearing creature. No one says a word. Then one of the older women walks over, looks at the fish, and nods. We'll keep it. It's survived something. You don't ask what. The boot is placed carefully beside the fire. Apparently, it's good luck to find footwear in moonless water. You try to imagine who first came up with that. Another emergency net is pulled. This one contains 3 silver fish, a tangled reed mat, and a wooden spoon. The spoon is celebrated. Good sign. Someone says, means the river's still cooking. The fish are quiet. Even the fish feel like they're waiting for something. Maybe the moon. Maybe not. By the end of the night, the nets are heavy with small victories. Nothing spectacular, but nothing disappointing either. And that's the point. Emergency nets don't dazzle, they endure. You learn that these nets are almost never named. They don't want names. Someone claims, too many stories already. They're patched constantly, often during use. If a hole tears, it's stitched mid-catch. If the cord frays, it's tied back in. You don't mourn what breaks you, just adapt. And maybe that's what these nights are for. The in-between nights. The no moon, no light, no predictability nights. The ones where you're forced to work with what you have. You return your net to the basket. It's still damp, still creaking. But you fold it with more respect than you expected to give a backup plan. As you walk back to camp, someone mutters, emergency nets always remember you. You don't know what that means, but you believe it. Tonight begins with silence and side-eye. You're not sure who started it, but there's tension in the air. The kind that clings to shoulders and thickens the way river fog does before a storm. People are whispering, but not the usual poetic, dreamy river gossip. This is different. Someone's net went missing, and someone else's calendar is wrong. And now, the baskets are being shifted just slightly closer to certain homes and further from others. Yes, tonight is about lunar theft. You didn't think it was a thing? But apparently, among Nubian fishermen, borrowing someone's net without asking during a specific moon phase is not just a breach of etiquette. It's a borderline supernatural offense. It wasn't just any net. Someone grumbles. It was the gibbous mouth, freshly renamed. The implication is clear, a net with a brand new name. Blessed under the appropriate moonlight should not have been in someone else's hands the following evening. Especially not if they used it under the wrong phase. You sit near the embers of the fire, sipping something lukewarm and mildly herby, listening to two men argue very quietly over whose reed basket was placed in the neutral zone. Apparently, that's what they call the stretch of bank where no one claims ownership, and thus, where passive-aggressive placements tend to occur. No fists are thrown, but someone moves a cooking pot a little too forcefully. A teenage boy sighs loudly and gets up to go check on the frogs, which is clearly coded for, I don't want to be here for this. The missing net is eventually found. Sort of. It's tangled in a tree root near the West Bend. Not torn. Not hidden. Just misplaced or placed strategically to look misplaced. And the real twist, it was cast during the wrong moon phase. Waning crescent, when it should have been used under the gibbous swell. That's like drinking hot tea during a thunderstorm, technically not illegal, but suspicious to anyone who knows better. Historians still debate how serious these infractions were. Some say moon phase fidelity was mostly symbolic. Others argue that misusing a net could throw off not only your catch, but the river's entire rhythm, leading to weeks of confusion, poor harvests, or even social fallout. Tonight, it feels very real. The net is returned without apology, just placed back near its rightful basket with a slightly damp cloth over it, like a guilty dog dropped off at the edge of its owner's porch. No one says thank you, but no one escalates it either. Instead, they go fishing in complete silence. You follow a smaller group upstream. They bring out a net that hasn't been used in weeks. It's wide, plain, and has a strange charm tied into its center, half a button and a piece of dried lime peel. They don't name this net out loud, but you catch someone referring to it under their breath as moon spoil. The catch is modest. A few silver fish, one eel, a handful of angry crabs that nobody remembers inviting, but the mood softens. Someone jokes that one of the fish looks like the man who stole the net. No one denies it. Later, back at the fire, the story gets rewritten. Now, the net wasn't stolen, it wandered. The moon called it elsewhere. The tree root was a test. The crescent phase, a misunderstanding. Maybe the moon blinked. You realize this is how things get remembered here. Not by accuracy, but by story smoothness. You hear another tale about a man who once tried to rename someone else's net while they were asleep. The next morning, his voice was gone for 3 days. He coughed like frogs. Someone says, another man once tied red thread into his neighbor's sliver net to gift it bravery. The net caught only water bugs for a month. His house was mysteriously rained on. Only his house. You sip your tea slower now. Later, as you pass the neutral zone, you notice one basket has been moved back to its original spot, a soft truce, and right next to it, a single fish scale, shiny, fresh, left as a peace offering. A warning, a joke. No one says, but the wind rustles the reeds like it's letting out a quiet chuckle, and somewhere upstream, a net names itself again. By now, the moon is a memory. The river rolls on, ignoring the sky, ignoring you, even ignoring the frogs who have begun to sound slightly existential. You sit in the same patch of flattened grass you've sat in for nights now, and tonight you're handed something odd. It's a net sort of lighter than any of the others, slightly warped, strung with pieces of translucent reed and a curve that doesn't follow any logic. It hangs crooked even when held taut. This one's retired. Someone says, but then they pass it to you anyway. You glance around. No one seems interested in explaining. This, the netmaster says at last, is one of the forgotten phases. You blink. There are more moon phases than the ones people talk about. Not in the sky. Maybe, but in the river. The net in your lap feels brittle. Its edges have been retied so many times that the knots look like tiny stories with missing endings. There are strange symbols drawn on the corner of the mesh in faded ink, maybe numbers, maybe maps, maybe warnings. You're told this net was once used only during lunar eclipses, rare moments when the moon disappears in full view. They called it the hider. One elder whispers, and it didn't catch fish. It caught decisions. You stare at them. They're dead serious. According to the story, this net was cast during eclipses to mark irreversible choices, marriages, harvest declarations, even secret truths between rival clans. The belief was that the net, absorbing the eclipse moonlight, would tie the decision into itself, making it binding. Some say the net grew heavier each time it was used, not with fish but with memory. Historians rarely mention this part. Too symbolic, too vague. But there are records of eclipse ceremonies involving river offerings, strange songs, and the quiet casting of unnamed nets. And tonight, just for show or perhaps not, you're casting one of them. You and 3 others walk it slowly into the river. There's no moon, no stars, only clouded dark and a feeling like you've wandered into someone's dream. You step in ankle deep, then knee deep. The net dips in your hands, dragging like it's reluctant. You don't cast it. You unroll it like laying out a piece of time. No one says a word. There's no chanting, no offerings, just your breath and the water's pull and the sense that you're doing something ancient and unsupervised. You wait for what? You don't know. Then the wind shifts. The net moves slightly, just a twitch. You all pull it in slowly, gently. Inside, nothing. But the mesh is wet with something that looks like ink. When you hold it to the firelight later, you see faint shapes on the netting, small circles, curved lines. One even looks like a human face, a smiling one. You ask what they mean. Some say it's how the net dreams. Someone says, another whispers that if you stare too long, you'll remember something that never happened. You do anyway. And for a moment, you think of a moon that never rose, a river that flowed backwards, and a name you haven't heard in years but now can't forget. They wrap the net in soft cloth, tie it with silence, and return it to a small clay urn filled with charcoal and crushed river mints. It won't be touched again until the next eclipse. Or, as one person says, until the moon tries to lie. You return to camp feeling lighter, and maybe a little heavier, like the net passed something to you, or took something in exchange. Someone hands you a mug of something warm. You drink it without asking what it is. The frogs don't sing tonight. Even they know better. The wind carries a softer edge tonight. Not cool exactly, just gentle. Like it's letting go. The reeds sway without urgency. The frogs offer only an occasional grunt, and the river doesn't ripple so much as exhale. And now, for the final time, you're handed a net. But this one is different. Not named, not charted, not wrapped in legend or passed down with warning. It's plain, functional, a bit frayed at the edge, and for some reason yours. You sling it over your shoulder and walk the familiar path down to the river. The others trail behind you, offering no guidance, just their presence. You feel them watching, not to supervise, but to witness. Because this one's for you. You wade into the shallows, feeling the fine silt give way beneath your heels. The water is lukewarm now, thick with early summer's weight. The moon still hasn't returned, not even a sliver, but you're not waiting for it anymore. You unroll the net. Slowly, it falls into the water with a gentle hush, no splash, no fuss, just a landing. It feels right. The others don't speak. They wait, quietly, on the shore, letting the night do what it needs to do. This net, the final one, doesn't come with expectations. It isn't meant to catch a specific fish, honor a particular phase, or whisper to river spirits. It's a net of instinct, a net for now. Historians don't have a record of this part. There's no scholarly debate about the final catch of a fisherman's cycle. It isn't on scrolls or carved in stone. It's passed only by doing a gesture, a feeling, a ritual wrapped in simplicity. The net shifts, not a pull, just a suggestion. You draw it in slowly, hands familiar with every fold, every twitch, and there resting in the center is a single, quiet fish, small, silver, unbothered. You lift it gently and hold it toward the sky where the moon should be. Nothing happens, but somehow that feels like everything. You return the fish to the water. You fold the net, carefully, lovingly, like it's a letter you've just finished writing. One you won't send, but will always carry. As you step out of the water, someone hands you a reed ribbon. You'll name it later, they say. You nod, because names don't always come when called. Sometimes they arrive when the moon returns. And maybe, by then, you'll know what to call this final net. The one that caught nothing and everything all at once. You join the others near the fire. No stories tonight. Just warm hands wrapped around mugs and the easy comfort of knowing nothing more needs to be said. The river keeps breathing. So do you. And in the quiet that follows, the frogs resume. Wind down 300 words. So now, the nets have all been folded, each one tucked into its pouch, its story briefly shared with you before slipping quietly back into the dark. The moon, though absent now, has left behind its fingerprints on the water, on your skin, in the way you now feel the slow tug of memory with every ripple. You lie back in the soft grass, the earth cool beneath you, the air still warm enough to make you forget the hour. Around you, nothing rushes. The fishermen speak in low tones, if at all, no orders, no questions, just presence. You remember the net of first light, how it breathed when cast. You remember the full mother, with her copper threads and moon-offering pouch. You even remember the misbehaving net that preferred frogs to fish. And now, with your own net coiled at your side, unnamed, unjudged, you begin to understand something unspoken. These nets weren't just tools. They were timekeepers. They were storytellers. And now they've folded you into their story too. You let your eyelids lower, let the wind skim your cheeks, let the slow hum of crickets and river reeds blur together in your ears. Whatever you've carried in with you, let it drift. Whatever name your net decides on it can wait. You've done enough for now, and as the first breath of dawn warms the horizon, the river remains, and it remembers you.